Just sign here, Mom, and we'll take care of everything. The man in the gray suit leaned across the table at Rosie's family restaurant, his gold pen poised and his smile sharp as a knife. The elderly woman nodded slowly, her trembling hands hovering over the real estate documents spread out in the booth. Around them, the clink of dinner plates and hum of evening conversation filled the air. To most, it looked like an ordinary business meeting, but to her, it felt like a trap. She tried to steady her breath. Something about the man's eyes, the way he hurried her through the property transfer papers, the thickness of the documents, it all screamed wrong. But she was alone, helpless. At least that's what he thought. Her hand twitched against the table, 3 fingers lifted subtly, curling, then straightened again. It was a signal she had seen on the news, a silent SOS for help. To anyone else, it looked like nothing. But across the restaurant, it didn't go unnoticed. A staff sergeant sat quietly with his Belgian Malinois at his side, his Air Force uniform catching the warm light of Rosie's dining room. He had come in for dinner after a long day, his dog resting loyally at his feet. But when he saw those fingers, the precise, trembling signal, his blood ran cold. That wasn't a nervous tic. That was a cry for help. His eyes narrowed on the suited man pressuring the elderly woman. The staff sergeant's military instincts kicked in immediately. He leaned down, whispered to the Malinois, and the dog's ears pricked up instantly. In seconds, the airman was on his feet, his steps firm, boots moving steadily across Rosie's tile floor as he closed the distance to the woman's booth. Conversations halted around them, forks paused midair. The restaurant tensed with curiosity and confusion as the evening's peaceful dinner rush suddenly shifted into something far more serious. "Everything all right here, ma'am?" His voice was calm, steady, but carried an unmistakable weight of military authority that made even nearby diners look up from their meals. "Yes, officer. Everything's fine. Just a simple real estate matter. Nothing for you to worry about." The man in the gray suit waved dismissively, his hand still hovering near the property transfer papers. The elderly woman looked up at the staff sergeant, her lips tight, eyes glistening. Her hand twitched again, repeating the silent signal. The staff sergeant's jaw set like stone. "Sir," he said evenly, "why don't you let her speak for herself?" The man scoffed, leaning back in the booth. "She doesn't need to. She's about to sign over her house." His eyes hardened as he gripped the pen tighter. The Belgian Malinois let out a low warning growl, its teeth flashing in Rosie's warm dining room light. The restaurant fell into dead silence. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Dinner plates sat forgotten as patrons turned to watch the unfolding confrontation. The staff sergeant stepped closer, towering now, his shadow stretching across the booth. "Ma'am," the airman said softly, ignoring the real estate broker completely, "are you in danger?" The elderly woman's chin quivered. She gave the slightest nod. That was all he needed. In a flash, the staff sergeant's hand moved, snatching the property documents away and slamming them onto the nearest table. "These aren't legitimate contracts. These are forged real estate papers," he snapped, his trained eye recognizing the fraudulent scheme instantly. The man in the gray suit jumped up, his chair screeching back against Rosie's tile floor. But before he could flee toward the exit, the Belgian Malinois lunged forward with a bark that rattled the restaurant's windows. The real estate scammer froze, pale as chalk, hands raised in surrender. Someone at a nearby table was already calling 911 on their cell phone. The waitress behind the counter had stopped serving completely, watching with wide eyes as the drama unfolded in her restaurant. Within minutes, police sirens could be heard approaching Rosie's family restaurant, growing louder as they raced through the evening streets. Officers arrived at Rosie's family restaurant, cuffing the real estate scammer and leading him out in disgrace through the evening crowd of stunned diners. The elderly woman exhaled shakily, relief flooding her frail body as she whispered, "Thank you." The staff sergeant knelt beside her booth, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You did the bravest thing you could," he said. "You asked for help, and you weren't ignored." The Belgian Malinois nudged her hand with its snout, tail wagging softly as if to reassure her that she was safe now in Rosie's warm dining room. Word of the incident spread quickly through the restaurant and then beyond. Local patrons pulled out their phones, sharing the story on social media. News outlets picked up the story of the elderly woman who had used a silent SOS to escape a real estate scam and the Air Force staff sergeant who had answered it without hesitation. Comments poured in praising her courage, but even more, they celebrated the watchful eye and swift action of an airman who never stopped protecting, even during his dinner break. Later, when reporters arrived at Rosie's family restaurant, they asked him why he acted so quickly. The staff sergeant shrugged humbly, still standing beside his Belgian Malinois, because that signal means someone's life could be in danger. And when you see it, you don't hesitate, you act. That's what we're trained to do in the Air Force. The woman's family later confirmed that the man in the gray suit had been trying to trick her into signing over her home and life savings through fraudulent real estate documents. Thanks to her presence of mind and an airman's vigilance, her life's work was saved from the predatory scheme. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear uniforms and sit quietly in family restaurants with loyal dogs at their feet. And sometimes the smallest signal, the lift of a few fingers, can be the difference between despair and rescue in the warm glow of Rosie's dining room on an ordinary evening. Before we end this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know how you feel in the comments section below. The staff sergeant's quick thinking at Rosie's family restaurant that evening became more than just a local news story. It sparked a movement across the community about recognizing silent distress signals and protecting vulnerable elderly citizens from predatory real estate scams. The Belgian Malinois, who had played such a crucial role in blocking the scammer's escape, became something of a local celebrity around the neighborhood. Sarah, the waitress who had been working that evening's shift at Rosie's, later told reporters that she had noticed something seemed off about the interaction but hadn't known how to intervene. I saw the woman looked uncomfortable with those property papers, but I didn't want to intrude on what looked like family business, she explained. Now I know about that finger signal, and I'll never ignore my instincts again. The real estate broker, it turned out, had been running similar scams across 3 counties, targeting elderly homeowners with forged property transfer documents. His arrest at Rosie's family restaurant led to a broader investigation that saved dozens of other potential victims from losing their homes and life savings. The staff sergeant, whose Air Force training had prepared him to recognize distress signals in combat situations, never expected to use those same skills during a quiet dinner with his Belgian Malinois. But military training, he reminded the gathering crowd of reporters and community members, isn't just for overseas deployments. It's about staying alert and ready to serve wherever you are. The elderly woman, Dorothy, kept the staff sergeant's business card in her purse and made sure every member of her family learned the silent SOS signal. Sometimes heroes appear when you need them most, she told her granddaughter, especially when you're brave enough to ask for help. The local police department held a special ceremony at Rosie's family restaurant 3 weeks after the incident. Captain Martinez presented the staff sergeant with a civilian commendation for his quick action in preventing the real estate fraud. The Belgian Malinois sat proudly beside his handler, wearing a special collar donated by the local veterinary clinic in recognition of his role in the heroic intervention. Dorothy's family organized a community dinner at the restaurant to thank everyone who had helped that evening. The dining room was packed with neighbors, local business owners, and even some Air Force personnel from the nearby base who had heard about their colleagues' off-duty heroism. Sarah, the waitress, was honored for her quick thinking in calling 911 when the situation escalated. During the dinner, a local elementary school teacher announced that they would be incorporating the silent SOS signal into their safety curriculum. "We want every child to know how to ask for help when they can't speak," she explained to the gathered crowd at Rosie's. This story shows that someone is always watching, always ready to help if they recognize the signs. The staff sergeant used his moment at the podium to emphasize the importance of community vigilance. Military training teaches us to be observant, but every citizen can develop these same skills, he said, his Belgian Malinois sitting calmly beside him. Whether you're at Rosie's having dinner or anywhere else, trust your instincts when something doesn't feel right. The real estate scammer received a 5-year prison sentence for elder fraud, and his conviction led to stronger state laws protecting elderly citizens from predatory property schemes. The case became a model for prosecutor training programs across the region, showing how quick intervention by alert citizens could prevent financial crimes against vulnerable populations. Dorothy kept a photo from the ceremony on her kitchen table, showing her shaking hands with the staff sergeant while his Belgian Malinois looked on protectively in Rosie's familiar dining room. 6 months later, the staff sergeant and his Belgian Malinois had become regular fixtures at Rosie's family restaurant. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, always saved their favorite booth near the window where they could observe the dining room. Other patrons would nod respectfully when they entered, and children would ask their parents if they could pet the famous hero dog who had helped save Dorothy. The silent SOS signal had spread throughout the community like wildfire. Local businesses posted small signs explaining the 3-finger distress call, and Rosie's had become an unofficial training center where Sarah the waitress would demonstrate the signal to curious customers. The restaurant's walls now featured framed newspaper articles about the incident and photos from the community ceremony. Dorothy visited Rosie's every Tuesday for lunch, always sitting in the same booth where the confrontation had occurred. She had transformed from a frightened victim into a community advocate, speaking at senior centers about recognizing scammer tactics and the importance of the silent SOS signal. Her confidence had returned, and she credited the staff sergeant's intervention with saving not just her property, but her faith in humanity. The Air Force Base where the staff sergeant was stationed began incorporating his story into their community outreach presentations. Military personnel were reminded that their oath to serve didn't end when they changed into civilian clothes. The base commander used the Rosie's restaurant incident as an example of how service members could make a difference in their local communities. The Belgian Malinois had also gained recognition beyond the local area. Military working dog organizations across the country shared the story of how proper training and alert instincts had helped prevent a crime. The dog's calm but decisive action in blocking the scammer's escape route became a case study in military police training programs. Even the real estate industry took notice of the case, implementing new verification procedures and ethics training to prevent similar fraud schemes targeting elderly homeowners. A year after the incident at Rosie's family restaurant, the staff sergeant received an unexpected phone call. A detective from 2 counties over had arrested another real estate scammer using similar tactics, and the suspect had mentioned the Rosie's case during questioning. It turned out the original fraudster had been part of a larger network targeting elderly homeowners across the region. The detective explained that Dorothy's case had become a key that unlocked a much bigger investigation. Because the staff sergeant had preserved the forged property documents and his Belgian Malinois had prevented the scammer's escape, prosecutors now had the evidence they needed to pursue the entire criminal organization. What started as one evening's heroic intervention had grown into a major victory against elder fraud. Dorothy was invited to testify before the state legislature about strengthening penalties for real estate fraud targeting seniors. She wore the same dress she had worn to Rosie's that evening, and she carried a small photo of the staff sergeant and his Belgian Malinois for courage. Her testimony was credited with helping pass new legislation that made elder fraud a felony with mandatory minimum sentences. The Air Force promoted the staff sergeant to technical sergeant, citing not only his military performance, but his exemplary conduct as a citizen soldier. His commanding officer noted that his actions at Rosie's family restaurant embodied the Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. The Belgian Malinois received a special recognition from the Military Working Dog Program. Mrs. Rodriguez at Rosie's decided to establish an annual Community Hero Award in honor of the incident. The first recipient was Sarah the waitress, who had started a neighborhood watch program that taught residents to recognize distress signals and respond appropriately. The award ceremony was held in the same dining room where the original drama had unfolded, with Dorothy presenting the honor to Sarah while the staff sergeant and his Belgian Malinois looked on proudly from their usual booth. 2 years later, the story of Rosie's family restaurant had reached national attention. The technical sergeant and his Belgian Malinois were featured on a morning television show about everyday heroes, sitting in the same booth where the original incident had occurred. The restaurant had become a pilgrimage site for people learning about the silent SOS signal and community vigilance. Dorothy had written a book about her experience, titled Silent Signals, Loud Heroes, with proceeds going to organizations that protect elderly citizens from financial fraud. She dedicated the book to the technical sergeant and his Belgian Malinois, and to Sarah the waitress who had shown that ordinary citizens could make extraordinary differences. The book signing was held at Rosie's, naturally, with a long line of supporters stretching around the block. The Air Force had incorporated the Rosie's incident into their ethics and community service training curriculum. New recruits learned about the technical sergeant's actions as an example of how military values should guide behavior both on and off duty. The Belgian Malinois' photo hung in the base's military working dog facility, inspiring handlers to remember that their partners could be heroes in civilian settings too. Mrs. Rodriguez had expanded Rosie's family restaurant, adding a community room where local organizations held meetings about elder protection and safety awareness. The walls were covered with thank you letters from families whose elderly relatives had been saved from scams after learning the silent SOS signal. Sarah, now promoted to assistant manager, led monthly workshops on recognizing distress signals. The original booth where Dorothy had sat that evening was marked with a small plaque reading "Community Heroes Eat Here," and it remained the most requested seating in the restaurant. Visitors from across the country would ask to sit where the famous intervention had occurred, and many left tips for the staff with notes thanking them for maintaining such a special place of community protection and heroism. 5 years after that fateful evening at Rosie's family restaurant, the technical sergeant had retired from the Air Force and opened a security consulting business specializing in elder protection services. His Belgian Malinois, now a senior dog but still alert, accompanied him to client meetings where they taught families how to recognize and respond to potential fraud situations targeting elderly relatives. Dorothy, now in her 80s, had become the unofficial spokesperson for a national campaign against elder fraud. She traveled to conferences and community centers, always carrying the same purse she had clutched that evening at Rosie's, telling her story to audiences across the country. Her silent SOS signal demonstration had been viewed millions of times online, saving countless potential victims from real estate and financial scams. Rosie's family restaurant had become a certified training center for the Silent SOS Recognition Program, with Mrs. Rodriguez and Sarah conducting workshops for restaurant workers, retail employees, and healthcare professionals. The program had spread to thousands of businesses nationwide, creating a network of trained civilians who could recognize and respond to distress signals from vulnerable individuals. The Belgian Malinois had sired several litters during his service years, and many of his offspring were now working as military and police dogs across the country. The Air Force Base maintained a memorial wall featuring his photograph and a story of how proper training and alertness could save lives in civilian settings. His bloodline became known for producing dogs with exceptional protective instincts and community awareness. The original gray-suited real estate scammer was serving his sentence in federal prison, where he had become an unexpected advocate for elder protection programs. His testimony about fraud tactics helped law enforcement agencies develop better training materials for recognizing and preventing similar crimes. Even criminals, it seemed, could be reformed by witnessing the power of community heroism and the consequences of their actions on innocent victims like Dorothy. On the 10th anniversary of the incident, Rosie's family restaurant hosted a massive community celebration that drew visitors from across the nation. The technical sergeant, now a respected elder protection consultant, sat in the same booth with his aging Belgian Malinois, greeting well-wishers and sharing stories about the importance of community vigilance. Dorothy, despite her advanced age, cut the ceremonial cake and delivered a stirring speech about how one moment of courage had changed countless lives. The Silent SOS Recognition Program had grown into a national nonprofit organization headquartered in a building next to Rosie's. Sarah, now the program's executive director, had trained over 50,000 service workers, teachers, and community members to recognize distress signals. The program's success had been measured in real lives saved, with documented cases of intervention preventing fraud, abuse, and dangerous situations across all 50 states. Mrs. Rodriguez had opened 3 additional Rosie's family restaurant locations, each featuring a community hero booth and serving as training centers for the Silent SOS program. The original restaurant had been designated a National Historic Site for community heroism, with a bronze plaque installed near the entrance commemorating the technical sergeant, his Belgian Malinois, and Dorothy's courage in asking for help. The Air Force had established the Dorothy and Technical Sergeant Community Service Award, given annually to military personnel who demonstrated exceptional civilian heroism while off-duty. The Belgian Malinois bloodline had produced over 100 working dogs serving in military, police, and service roles worldwide, with each handler learning the story of their dog's heroic ancestor who had helped save an elderly woman from real estate fraud. The anniversary celebration featured a parade through downtown, ending at Rosie's where the technical sergeant and Dorothy unveiled a life-size bronze statue of the Belgian Malinois positioned protectively beside a restaurant booth, symbolizing eternal vigilance and the power of trained heroes to recognize and respond when innocent people need help most. As the sun began to set on the anniversary celebration at Rosie's family restaurant, the technical sergeant sat quietly in the memorial booth, his hand resting gently on his Belgian Malinois, who was now showing his age but still alert to the festivities around them. Dorothy, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, pointed to the bronze statue and told them the story they had heard countless times, but never tired of hearing about how 3 fingers held subtly could change everything. The Silent SOS Recognition Program had documented over 10,000 successful interventions since that evening years ago, with elderly citizens, children, and vulnerable adults saved from fraud, abuse, and dangerous situations. Sarah's organization had become a model for community safety programs worldwide, with international delegations visiting Rosie's to learn how a simple signal and trained observers could protect society's most vulnerable members. Mrs. Rodriguez announced that evening that she would be establishing the Rosie's Community Hero Scholarship Fund, providing college tuition assistance to young people who demonstrated exceptional community service and vigilance in protecting others. The first scholarship would go to Dorothy's great-granddaughter, who had started a peer protection program at her high school teaching students to recognize when their classmates might be in distress. The technical sergeant reflected on how military training had prepared him for that moment, but it was civilian courage that had created lasting change. His security consulting business had grown into a national enterprise, but he still returned to Rosie's every Tuesday for lunch, maintaining the tradition he had started with Dorothy all those years ago. The Belgian Malinois, despite his advanced age, still positioned himself protectively beside any elderly customers who sat alone. As the celebration wound down and the last visitors departed, the technical sergeant, Dorothy, Sarah, and Mrs. Rodriguez stood together beside the bronze statue for people whose lives had been forever intertwined by one evening's heroic intervention that proved ordinary citizens could create extraordinary change in their communities. Years later, when Dorothy passed away peacefully at the age of 92, her funeral was held at the community center next to Rosie's family restaurant. The technical sergeant, now in his 70s, delivered the eulogy alongside his beloved Belgian Malinois, who had grown old protecting the community they both loved. Dorothy's family requested that donations be made to the Silent SOS Recognition Program rather than flowers, ensuring her legacy of protection would continue helping vulnerable people for generations to come. Sarah, now a nationally recognized expert on community safety, established the Dorothy Memorial Training Center at Rosie's, where thousands of people each year learn to recognize distress signals and respond with courage. Mrs. Rodriguez had retired, but still visited daily, greeting visitors who came from around the world to see where 3 simple finger movements had sparked a movement that saved countless lives from fraud and abuse. The bronze statue of the Belgian Malinois became a pilgrimage site for military working dog handlers, police canine officers, and service dog trainers who understood that heroism comes in many forms. Children would pet the statue and ask their parents about the real dog who had helped save an elderly lady, learning that heroes could have 4 legs and loyal hearts that never stopped protecting innocent people. The technical sergeant security consulting business continued training families, businesses, and organizations about elder protection. But his most meaningful work remained the weekly visits to Rosie's, where he would sit in Dorothy's memorial booth and watch for anyone who might need help. His aging Belgian Malinois still accompanied him, both of them maintaining the vigilance that had started all on one evening when a simple signal had called them to action. The story of Rosie's family restaurant proved that heroes walk among us every day, that military training serves communities long after uniforms are retired, and that the smallest gesture can echo through generations when brave people choose to act when others need help most desperately.